Welcome to the Future Sense podcast with Steve McDonald and Nick Jeans, broadcast weekly from our Future Sense pod in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales, Australia, and available on your favourite podcast platforms or directly through rd.org/futuresense. That's ADII.org. And you can follow us on Twitter at Future Sense Show or on our Facebook page. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you for joining us here on Future Sense this morning. Today is June the 18th, 2020, where we are recording in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales, and you'll be listening to us some point ahead of that, or perhaps before that. You never know. Good morning to, or good afternoon to wherever you are, to Steve McDonald. How are you doing?
G'day, Nick. I'm very well, thank you.
That's a bit silly, but we do like to jump timelines here quite regularly, as a matter of fact. Part of the parameters of the show, it's a necessary equation, a necessary parameter that you need to all hold, I think, out there to be part of this show, to be able to jump timelines.
Non-linearity, you could call it.
Non-linearity is the word.
Exactly. So today we're going to talk about the evolution of personal care, and obviously the whole topic of personal care has been highlighted by the COVID-19 epidemic and the response to that. And we've been thrust into this period of having a whole lot of time to think about ourselves and also sense where we're at and how we're changing as a result of the world changing around us. And one of my teachers used to say that the change has already happened, we're just growing into it. And that's so true. So we're going to talk specifically about the emerging paradigm, layer 6 in Claire Graves' model, and how personal care changes and is changing at the moment across society and at a personal level. And part of the current life conditions is, of course, the astrological scenario that we're sitting under right at the moment with all the planets in their various alignments. And I believe, Nick, there's a special focus on self-care indicated there.
Well, somewhat, yeah. Mercury today, as I said before, June the 18th, has just gone retrograde. Retrograde means from the perspective of the Earth, the planet appears to be moving backwards. It's not actually doing so. But in astrology, it represents sort of hold or a pull back or a tension in the energy of that planet. And Mercury, of course, is the messenger of the gods. In mythology, it's a planet of expression and relationships in terms of communication. And I note that in Chinese astrology, Mercury represents water, the fourth element, therefore symbolizing that communication and intelligence and elegance. When it's retrograde, those aspects of ourself are sort of held back a bit, and often people talk about things not working. Also, Mercury, your email doesn't work, or something goes wrong with one of your phones or one of a piece of technology. These things can also happen. But I found this really, really great piece which covers a bit bigger picture and also does allude to what we're going to be talking about today, about how we approach self-care now. And I found this from an astrological program that you can download. It's an app, actually. It's called The Pattern. It's very good. I haven't told you about this at all yet, Steve, so this is new for you as well.
I'm listening.
But it's actually a very interesting piece, and we might come back to it. But I'm going to read a little piece about Mercury retrograde, which was sent this morning, so it's very current, and lasts until the 12th of July. So it's a few weeks. Mercury retrogrades are always fairly short, but they seem to be very potent. People seem to have a respect for them. They seem to have response to them. That it seems to have some meaning for people, and people seem to have an understanding that there is an influence there and something happens. So this is what it says about Mercury retrograde at this time, up until the 12th of July. Most people assume that the world works in a logical, linear, and somewhat predictable way, but that's not always the case. Expecting that on any given day everything will go as planned actually helps perpetuate this illusion. During this time frame, these assumptions are severely compromised. The regular, logical flow of events will appear to be disrupted. This may be a familiar feeling based on global events and circumstances right now, of course, but you're also asked to notice how closely this actually touches your own energy at this time. That's an element of self-care right there. As a result, the world won't operate in the way that you expect at this time. Instead, what seems objective one minute becomes subjective. What seems left brain becomes right brain, and connections will be missed, both with people and with technology and with machines possibly. These energies may or may not affect everyone at the same time or in the same way, but they probably won't feel as strong as any personal cycles that you're having, because that's also the current. This is a general cycle for everybody as a retrograde planet pulls back like this, but it will affect your individual chart in different ways, and that's for you to look at, perhaps, if you're interested in doing so. It might also be easier for you to do that if you already operate outside of the mainstream. I think this is a key point here, as if your work might be in a non-traditional or a creative area. However, if you depend on logic to function, you may feel especially challenged right now. These disruptions and confusions can be annoying, but if you're able to overlook them, this time frame can offer special possibilities. You may see this moment as an opportunity to move past linear thinking and let your mind go beyond conventional wisdom and expectations. This can be a great few weeks for inner work, meditation, and reflection. Often artistic endeavors or anything that uses your right brain or intuition can really thrive at this time. And some ordinary duties can also succeed with a bit of patience, but just recognizing the realization that most other people are also probably a little bit unclear and inconsistent at this time too. That's kind of a good thing to remember when you're feeling a bit out of sorts. Maybe everybody's feeling this way to some degree or another. It's not necessarily a time to do anything, but it's important to notice your inner experience. Your thoughts and words could take on a more sensitive quality and feel more open and vulnerable than usual. And lastly, try to pay attention to those feelings and be aware of what's happening around you and with others. But remember, there is nothing to fix or change right now. You don't need to become overly concerned with others. It's also important to assess your own need for being appreciated and treated with sensitivity. And as I said, this time frame lasts until July the 12th. Yes, interesting pieces in there, isn't there?
Really interesting, Nick. And it's interesting to look at how those themes fit so well with the transition that we're going through at a global scale. And we really have been through a perfect storm with this global disruption from COVID-19 that's setting the scene to support this transition beyond layer 5, which is the old scientific industrial paradigm, and into the emerging layer 6, which is going to be fairly short-lived. And one of its key roles is to make a solid foundation for this huge transition into second-tier consciousness, which begins with layer 7. So a lot of that description is very, very supportive of that process. If you think about the fact that the fifth layer, the scientific industrial era, has really been like the peak of rationalism and logical thinking.
It's really been a Mercury time, you could argue.
Absolutely. And moving into layer 6, we are drawn back to the communal way of interpreting life and living, and which is a feminine aspect. And so it's all about reconnecting with things that we disconnected ourselves from during that fifth layer, one of them being non-rational things and pre-rational things like our emotions and our physical body and anything immaterial, I guess. And so it's a time to be reawakening to those things and starting to slowly integrate the left and right side of the brain, and of course that integration crystallizes with the transition to layer 7 in second tier. So it really is, as I said, the perfect storm, very supportive of what humanity is going through at the moment. And this is not just a shift in human consciousness, this is a whole of system change for our entire solar system, actually, on the largest scale that we're really well informed about, the transit of our solar system out of what's called the local cloud and across a null zone to what's called the G cloud, a different part of our galaxy. And that's exposing us to all sorts of different radiation from outer space, cosmic radiation, and changing the life conditions throughout our solar system and on our planet. And a couple of the examples of that are the climate change that we're seeing, and also things like the mass extinction, which is underway and which will also lead to a mass replenishment. And that is the way that these things work. When we look back throughout history, you can see whenever there's been a mass extinction, there's been an explosion of life after that.
And in fact, in our pure human spheres, when there are crises like wars or a natural disaster, humans themselves come together in different ways. We create more, we become more abundant in the way that we express ourselves, and new connections are made, new hybridizations of ideas and philosophies even, but certainly science accrues. So we're in that period now, aren't we, where there's an acceleration of the possibilities of new evolutions of everything, really.
That's right, and the COVID-19 response has played a key role in that, because by forcing us into isolation, in other words, extreme individualism, it's basically pulled the elastic band back to fling us into communal ways of thinking and being.
And part of that, of course, is the recognition of the environmental stress that the whole planet and our bodies, our internal, and we're going to be talking a fair bit about the gut biome and those kind of fairly new concepts that most of you are probably familiar with now. But it is this, as one commentator, Zach Bush, MD, who I do like a lot, an American, fairly young doctor who I think is fantastic, he says that the coronavirus, for example, is unmasking the toxicity of our environment. I think that's a wonderful way to look at an aspect of what COVID-19 has been doing. Is even though climate change has sort of been shoved slightly to the side at this time, off the front page of everywhere, but what has come is a recognition that our environment is under stress. We've seen, on one hand, blue skies appearing over Wuhan after the lockdown there, and many other cases such as that, and a cleaning of the air and a cleaning perhaps also of water, at least temporarily. And that is somehow showing us all that, well, actually it is the damage to the environment that is reflected in the damage to our bodies and our responses to everything at this time.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that harmonic between the personal scale and the collective scale there. And this increased awareness of the earth and the environment is a key aspect of the transition from layer 5 to layer 6. And being part of the first tier of consciousness, when we go through one of these value system transitions between layers, there's an automatic rejection of what came before. And so we're seeing that in society now, where people are looking back at the old paradigm and saying the industrialization was bad. Look at all the damage we did to the planet. And we're really starting to reconnect with and care for the planet at a global scale, and that same pattern is happening at a personal scale where we're noticing the damage that the old paradigm way of living has done to our bodies.
Yeah.
The working in the rat race, the medical system and its particular way of operating, the food, processed food that we've been eating, and all these sorts of things, and how they've impacted our bodies. And so we've got this harmonic happening both at a personal level and a global level, where we're saying, oh my gosh, this is not good. We need to change that. We need to stop doing a whole bunch of things that we were doing before, and we need to find new ways.
That's right. Well, some statistics, and there's, of course, many variables in this, but I note that in 1960, for example, chronic diseases in children in the US, and I expect it was probably roughly the same sort of figures here, were 1.8%. Just 1.8% of children at that time in 1960. Now, in 2020, what's that, 60 years later, that number is 52%. 52, over half of our children in our Western societies, in our largely layer 5 societies, I guess you could say, have chronic diseases, and that's a pretty telling statistic indeed.
It is indeed, and you can think about the time scale of that emerging as, industrialization and different ways of running our agricultural industry and those sorts of things have changed. Then the stress from all of these particular inputs, is slowly added up over time. And part of reinventing how we care for ourselves is also taking more notice of, the impact of these things on us. When you stop and think about these things, as we've had time to do recently, you start to realize that, okay, we've actually been under continual stress in so many different areas of our lives, just never ending, and it's got to pop sooner or later. And that is a key aspect of this transition from layer 5 to layer 6 is normally some kind of a burnout or breakdown. That's normally what happens for most people.
I don't know, too, I just wanted to mention, I mentioned 1960 there, of course, the 60s, where we talked about this quite a lot on Future Sense in the past, about the resonance of the 60s with this era. And it's interesting that Rachel Carson's famous book, Silent Spring, published in 1962, still remains the most important and relatable environmental science books of all time, and still influences this sudden awakening, or not sudden, but this awakening of consciousness around environment, body, all things above and below. And we've had this message since the 60s for 60 years at least. And it seems like we're maturing into a much bigger appreciation and understanding of what that actually means and what we can actually do about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, that's part and parcel of the emerging value system. And every time we see a wave of that arise in society, then we're going to have that knocking on our door. Absolutely. So one of the things I was going to mention was a little tick and flick questionnaire called the Perceived Stress Scale. And it's very, very common. Many people would have seen it before. It's just a bunch of questions, only 10 questions actually, which ask things like, in the last month, how often have you been upset because of something that happened unexpectedly? In the last month, how often have you found that you could not cope with all the things that you had to do? Those sorts of things. And you rate these on a scale of 0 to 4. From never to very often, and then you end up with a little numerical score. And
what'd you get?
I actually haven't got my numbers in front of me here, but I got to tell you, I was definitely under stress when I did it, which was a week or two ago.
Maybe you should do the test when you're not under stress, or maybe when you are under stress. Get 2 readings, and you say, "Well, I'm pretty bad when I'm bad. I'm not too bad when I'm okay." So where's the middle ground?
Yeah,
interesting.
On this, and I'll post a link on our social media to this PDF version of the test that I've got here, and then it has like an average or a mean for male and female, and also across different age groups. So it's quite useful just to do that and get a sense of where you're at, because so often, particularly during the last paradigm, we've been operating under stress and just feeling like it's normal when actually it's not. And now at this time, we have an opportunity to reimagine the way that we're living life.
Yes.
And it's good to take this into account and try and reinvent life in a way that is less stressful, for sure.
It seems just on that, as you're saying that, I'm feeling in this region, and we live, as many of you out there listening to us know, this region of Australia, maybe you don't, it is a bit of a bubble, and we are in a unique place. But certainly what I'm hearing in our world here, as we're coming slowly out of lockdown, is the many ideas that many people are having about change, about how they can find ways to contribute, that they've had some new ideas, they're doing something different, like everything's been shaken up to such a degree. And just that, I think, is an aspect of self-care, to be able to shake yourself up in a way when you necessarily have to do so, but with a consciousness that I want to contribute something different here. I want to, or have an idea to bring something new forward that can help. So I think that's really interesting, is that our psyches are actually stimulated to change at the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I think it might be useful for us to talk about how the emerging paradigm, the emerging worldview associated with Layer 6 is changing the way we think about looking after ourselves. And I guess one key way to describe that is Layer 6 is all about connecting the dots. And it's a very network-centric way of thinking. So it likes to look at all of the different factors and options and things around and figure out how they're connected. How do they relate to each other? It's very much about relationship as a communal system. And some of the things that are emerging in the new mainstream, I guess you could call it, are understandings of how our body operates in a more connected way. And I must say this is something that's been pretty well preserved in the East and Eastern medicine, such as traditional Chinese medicine, but somewhat lost in Western medicine, where we've specialized so much that we've lost the impact of the connections between systems within the body.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing that, you're a Qigong practitioner of 20 years or so.
Yeah.
So you know this structure of how that actually occurs. And that awareness is really growing, isn't it, in so many different ways. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, many body, mind, spirit practices that exist and are expanding and have some solid scientific backing behind them, particularly Chinese expressions of these kind of activities.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's one of the aspects of the value shift over the last few decades has been the spread of these things from the East into the West. Yeah. Let's just talk about the gut biome for a moment. Have you got something on that there?
Yes, well, the gut biome, as I referred to before, is an ecosystem, I guess is the best way to describe it in a way, and is the real core of our health, as I now understand it. And I think that's becoming relatively solid, even allopathic knowledge at the cutting edge of allopathic medicine, where some perhaps more enlightened medicos are seeing a bigger picture. But certainly there is science to back this, the power of the microbiome to generate life, the life force, and particularly I think it's called ATP, isn't it? Which is
they call it the
triphosphate.
The life force.
The life force,
yeah.
So this is what is missing now, and an unbalanced microbiome has really now been shown to be the beginning of endemic health problems across the board, particularly as I mentioned those statistics with children. So clearly with children who've got compromised microbiomes, either from the stress of the environment or the type of food that they're eating, or the stress, the psychological stress they might be living under, or a combination of these factors, many people, many young people and people generally have a compromised microbiome now, an unbalanced microbiome, where the diversity of the flora that exists in there is minimized, and there's a lot of, so to speak, bad bugs, bad viruses, or things that don't help and support our health. So we're starting to look at that and see that the food we eat, the stress that we do or don't carry with us, and the nature of our relationships, the environment we live in, the air, the water, the earth, all of these things, what's in our food, the soil quality, all of these factors are impacting on the microbiome, and we're now seeing the results in our societies of a compromised microbiome as an endemic problem in most of our Western countries, I think, now.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting when you think about how our worldview is changing as we move from the scientific industrial into this emerging postmodern paradigm, which is very network-centric and humanistic and communal in its theme, that we start to see the world as connected communities, and we're starting to see our body as a connected community of our own cells, and also this community of microbiome, which is spread right throughout the body, as I understand it. It's very interesting indeed. I've got a scientific paper here by two, looks like quite possibly Chinese authors, both by the name of Wu. And I'll just read a little from the abstract. It's saying that keeping a delicate balance in the immune system by eliminating invading pathogens while still maintaining self-tolerance to avoid autoimmunity is critical for the body's health. So what they're saying is that the microbiota, as they call it, all of these microorganisms that we have living in our bodies, are playing a critical role in our immune system, and it's important to have a balance, a homeostasis within that microbiome in order for our immune system to operate at an optimal level. And I think this is certainly part of the future of, or future mainstream medicine, is understanding how we can boost and support our own immune systems, so that rather than having to put pharmaceutical drugs and things in our body to try and resolve the issues within our body, our own immune systems can actually do that if they're healthy and well supported. Yeah,
and that gut-brain connection is the important thing here. And I noted some interesting statistics on a video I watched the other day from again Zach Bush, where he talks about the vagus nerve and the role of the vagus nerve in that gut-brain connection. And when that nerve is compromised, then we've got problems right there. And inflammation occurs, leaky gut occurs, all these sort of fairly modern, recent illnesses or conditions that have been visited upon us. And then the many ways with foods and other things that you can start to rebuild, because you've kind of got to rebuild this. If you've got a compromised immune system, you've got to rebuild that system. So how can we rebuild the system? You got some things there.
Well, from a layer 6 point of view, we're going through this process during layer 6 of reconnecting with, or maybe that's not the right term, becoming more aware of our body, and so we're getting up close and personal with what's going on in our body, and starting to think of our body as a community. And some people are actually talking to their organs and talking to the different parts of their bodies, and sometimes they'll get answers, and they tell them, what's going on or what they need and those sorts of things. And this is, it's a a transition phase that's taking us into second tier, where we have this great leap in capacity right across our whole being. And part of that is really having a very, very good connection with the body and being able to communicate with and become aware of, and also moderate our body's responses to things, in a very, very direct way. So layer 6 is really the bridge to that. And the layer 6 way is to connect the dots, as I was saying. So, we typically look across different systems and try and understand how those systems are connected. And in a medical and a well-being sense, we're likely to be looking at different alternative ways of healing, and also trying to see the relative worth and the relative impact between different alternative medicines. And we see this in a whole explosion in the alternative medicine scene that's been going on for a few decades now.
And it can be quite simple. I think a lot of this is actually some very simple practices to set the ground for what you may want to do with foods, and particular sorts of superfoods or adaptogens and various substances like these. And you might want to create a program for yourself under the right guidance. But I think some of the things that are the foundation of this are quite simple. For example, just grounding, being barefoot on the soil, on the earth, and connecting with the magnetic field of the planet itself, and also releasing the charge that we've built up, especially if you're working with technology all the time and you're sitting in front of your computer or on your phone. Just as simple. I've been doing this a lot recently. I've always been someone who doesn't like shoes that much, but I like to take off my shoes several times. I'm working on the computer, and I will just go outside and I will walk, I'll stand, maybe just do a bit of simple qigong, just bend the knees and just ground and allow that charge to actually go into the earth and to let go. And it's amazing how simple that is. But that's actually, those sort of simple practices are really the foundation to create a more sophisticated response to the issues that we've now got on the planet that we're talking about here. Following things like mindfulness and meditation, which add to those practices before you even get physical about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we often say on the show, having some kind of a regular practice is a very supportive thing at this time in history. I'm probably go so far as to saying, it's essential. If it's not essential for you yet, it probably will get to that point where you'll need to have some sort of regular, ideally a mind, body, spirit integrated practice that you do on a regular basis. How often that is really up to what you need and how you feel. But part of this process of reconnecting to the earth, as you just said, Nick, and earthing ourselves is very important. And one reason for that is because of this transit of our solar system, as I was saying before, on the very largest scale. The frequencies of the earth are changing, and we see that recorded scientifically in what they call the Schumann resonance, which in the past has sat around
7.83 hertz.
7.83 hertz. And in the last 12 months has been peaking at times up to 99 hertz, and often sitting around 20 or 30 hertz on a regular basis. And so that's like the Earth's background heartbeat as far as our body is concerned. It definitely has an impact on our wellness. We know from the science of sending astronauts into space that when they're disconnected from that background frequency of the Earth, they become unwell. And so with that background frequency changing so much at the moment and fluctuating, we really need to be regularly tuning ourselves in to that frequency of the earth. And as you just said, the best way to do that is to earth ourselves and ideally practice some kind of mind, body, spirit integrated practice where you're moving your body, you're in a meditative state, and you're connecting with the earth at the same time and allowing your body to retune itself to whatever the earth's frequency is on each particular day.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know you probably do as a Qigong practitioner of that length of time, that simple things like the horse pose or any strengthening posture, this also applies to yoga too, and anything like that. But it actually creates more ATP. I mentioned before the adenosine triphosphate from the mitochondria, which apparently we produce our own body weight of ATP a day.
Wow.
From the mitochondria. Yeah, this is
our own body weight.
That's what I.
That can't be right.
Well, there you go. So, listeners, this is for you to go and check. You go and check, and please feedback and comment to.
If that's true, then we must destroy our own body weight in the same
we do.
period of time as well.
ATP is what actually drives everything. Like it's the energy driver of the whole system. So, but literally, simply just standing with legs in that posture for a while, or any of those sort of leg strengthening postures, increases that production of ATP in the mitochondria.
Yeah, it's long been known in Qigong communities that regular practice has an enhancing effect on the immune system. It seems to slow down the aging process and energize you and balance you and all that sort of thing. So and if you're interested in exploring that, then I really recommend you find yourself a good teacher nearby that you can go and learn from. And ideally, these things are best learnt in company with a good teacher, so you can have first-hand body corrections in terms of postures and those sorts of things by a good teacher.
Yeah. And so there's we've been touching on a lot of things here, and there are many things that you probably know intuitively for yourself, and we certainly encourage you, as we're talking today, particularly about moving between the layers of 6 and 7 in Claire W. Grace's conception, which is across the Great Divide, the momentous leap. And in that change, it's also really about, as Steve's already alluded to a couple of times, to tuning into being intuitive about what is right for you. You can learn all these practices, you can know stuff, you can go and do classes, but actually what works for you. And that talking to the body you mentioned before, and that intuitive understanding that, oh yes, this is what I need now. And I think a lot of the time that we've been locked down around the world, perhaps, and this would be interesting to know your own feedback, folks out there who are listening to us, how much have you been able to negotiate your relationship with your body, for example, to be able to listen to it better, to be able to know I shouldn't eat that extra piece of cake now. I should have that little bit of adaptogen mushroom juice over there that I've got in lion's mane over there in a little bottle. And I think that, and I'm talking from my own experience, because that's certainly happening for me in this time, where I'm spending a lot more time by myself and quiet, is something in me kind of knows this now, not that now. And it's exciting. And I'm just wondering how many other people are experiencing that, because I think it's probably something, it's growing in us. Well, you'd think it would be if we're evolving.
Yeah, it is for sure. And as I was saying before, this is really part of the journey as we transition through layer 6 to layer 7 in second tier. And in the individual systems, we tend to want to change the outside world to suit ourselves. So we have a very individual focus and perspective on the world. We're coming out of an individual system at layer 5, but we're also moving into an individual system in layer 7 as we shift into second tier. And in between, we have this communal system where we tend to want to sacrifice our own needs in some sense in order to fit with the world around us. And it's really in layer 6 about how do I change myself internally to fit with what the world needs of me right now. And so hence we have this internal focus, and it's a perfect time for you to rethink what you're doing with your life, your life path, how you work and how you live, what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, who you're hanging out with, who is your local community of trusted friends, and how do they impact your well-being, and everything else that goes into to being well. Yeah.
Do you think, as you're speaking there, the notion of time itself, how we use time, our relationship to time itself seems to be changing, and even the sense of timelessness that's more, again, feedback from people out there in the world, in our community here, this sense of people don't know what day it is anymore often.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of breaking up of that, and that's actually a relaxation that's available there, because people are starting to feel like, oh, there's actually more time than I think, and I can actually look after myself better than I think. I'm seeing this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, part of what changes when we move between these layers is our underlying framework for making sense of reality. So in other words, everything changes.
Yeah.
And part of that is our conceptualization of space and time. And we spoke about this on a previous episode quite a while ago now. I think it was probably last year. And we're in a relatively linear place in layer 5, with a fairly short-term outlook, and moving into a communal system. The communal systems tend to be more circular in their way of thinking, and in particular, layer 6 has a great desire and a tendency to collapse hierarchies. So it wants to flatten everything out. And so the sort of space-time conceptualization that we get in layer 6 is of a flat surface with circular patterns on it. And part of that is starting to think that all time is present there on that flat plane. And I can remember myself going through this and thinking about it years ago, and I started thinking about a CD or a DVD, you know, in the old days when we used to have these discs that you would stick in a computer. And if you think about a gaming CD or DVD, the whole game is right there on the flat surface of that circular piece of plastic. And so from a game player's point of view, the past, the present, and the future of the game are all there present right now. And it really just depends when you put it into your computer where you start and finish in a linear sense when you're actually playing it, but actually it's all right there. Yeah. And so that's a classic kind of layer 6 conceptualization. And so we are, as we're moving into layer 6, for many of us, or through layer 6, we are thinking in that circular way of everything being here now. And consequently, our thoughts go to things like past lives and future lives and the possibility that all those things are happening at the same time, etc.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it would seem a lot of people are entertaining these broader conceptions and perceptions of reality in various ways at this time, for sure. That's about it for this first part for this week. We're going to be doing a second part, so stay tuned.
Stay with us. Next up on our next episode, we're going to go into layer 7, so the first step into second tier, and just look at how this process of body awareness and wellness and our particular worldview and perspective changes as we make this enormous leap into second tier, which is just a massive quantum scale change in who we are and what we're able to do. So tune in for that.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us here.
Cheers.
You've been listening to the Future Sense podcast with Nick Jeans and futurist Steve McDonald, broadcast weekly. We're also happy to be liked or loved on the platform that you're listening to right now, and we welcome feedback, comments, and input. Thanks for joining us. And remember that the future is here now, it's just not evenly distributed.